Hello and welcome back to the Once and Future Parent. Today we're talking about letting go. Everything from the first time you step out of the house without the baby with you, to letting your kid start to drive, to letting your kid start to go on dates, to letting your kid go to college. Parenthood is forever about letting go. It's also forever about facing crises and situations and challenges that you didn't expect and that come up suddenly. So I'm going to let go of my need to host, and because this was Mandy's topic, Mandy, face an unexpected challenge.
Well, right now the challenge is getting through the first 5 minutes without crying.
Well, there you go. There we go.
Right? The idea of letting go, just the phrase is so heartbreaking to me. But an unexpected challenge, is that what we're starting with, or?
No, I was making a joke that I'm making you the host instead of that I'm letting go of the need to host and giving you the unexpected challenge of hosting. Clearly, I was far too subtle with that.
No problem. I had a big milestone recently, and since then, even more milestones. But Casey, my 15-year-old son, said, hey, I'm going to get my permit soon, so we should probably start this driving thing. And my husband, Jeremy, took him up to an empty parking lot on a Sunday, and it went well. And then I got my turn to take him, and I sat in the passenger seat, and he did great. He was careful and thoughtful, but I was emotional because I'm not always going to be in the passenger seat making sure he's doing everything. And I can't fathom the first time he says, all right, I'm going to go out with my friends. Can I take your car? And we say, sure, just go. Mm-hmm. Pete is laughing at me. Pete, what is that moment like?
No, it sucks. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Good.
Yeah, no,
Great.
it's objectively terrible. These years of 16 to sort of 19, 15 to 19 are so chock full of these moments. Some of them you're thinking about, even if you know you're not ready for. Others that you just had no idea were going to hit you sideways. And driving was one of them. Taking the test, taking the permit test, getting the permit, getting the license. It's like every single line in the path forward is perforated with these kinds of shockingly emotional moments. But the driving one is it is extraordinary because it's not just about, oh my God, what have I forgotten to teach them? Like that's and honestly, that's kind of the major arc over all of these is there is some sort of new freedom that they have, and I have somehow failed. And the moment they leave, I've remembered the one thing that's going to keep them safe, happy, smart, whatever it is. And driving was huge. Watching them pull away from the house with that new freedom was it is. I mean, it's both, punch. But it's also wonderful, right? Like if you've done it right, it's really neat to see. Oh my God, look at how capable they are. Look at how they can use their feet and their hands and their eyes at the same time, right? Like all of those things. Like I don't know. It's not like I assume they can't do those things, but I'm still surprised when they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's lovely.
There's so much here to unpack, and I want to talk about this one specifically, especially because it's one that, growing up in New York City, I never went through as a kid.
Oh, true.
And so you all talking about this makes me think, okay, so around 15 is when we'll move back to the city, because I think it's the best place to be high school
you won't
in the
have
world.
to deal with it.
But I want to take a wider angle lens here, because I apparently am having trouble letting go of being a host. But am I right in thinking that when we talk about letting go, it feels like there's two related but different things here? One of which is the milestones when our kids don't need us as much, when our kids are becoming a little more independent and we're having to let go of that need to control everything because our kids can now do it themselves, which is awesome, but also, start singing Sunrise Sunset from Fiddler. It's I remember when you were a baby in my arms and now you're going off and doing these things. Mm-hmm. The other part is that we don't let go for a while because there's dangers, because we don't just want to, let a 10-year-old get behind the wheel of a car, or we don't want to let our 5-year-old go and, talk to all the neighbors without us, or my little baby sleep in a bed with a blanket by itself. Like, there is a level of danger prevention. And so to me, it feels like the other half of letting go is that worry of, I think we're at a point, where I can let go of the bike that I've been holding on the back and trust that the kid can ride the bike myself. But I'm worried that I'm wrong. I'm worried that, as you said, we haven't taught them enough, that they are going to fall. The bike is going to fall, that they are going to crash the car, that they are going to, have a hard time in college by themselves. Is that accurate description of kind of like the different things that go into this idea of letting go?
Yeah, for me, for sure, because there is this, there's an identity shift that comes with it, which is very much wrapped up in the role shift, right, as a parent, because as soon as the kids get their license, they're gone at unpredictable hours. They have autonomy and agency in how they manage their own schedules to a level that we had yet to experience. They have suddenly they have study groups at the end of school days where they stay on their own because they don't need you to come pick them up anymore. They can get themselves to it. That sort of independence is it is like we talk about the empty nest syndrome, but that starts at about 14 because of these changes, right? Because of this new identity for both child and parent. I think the control and safety stuff that you rightly picked up is, we're fighting the evolutionary hardwire of our need to keep our children alive, and having them alone in this 2,000-pound death machine on the highway is terrifying. And I think that instinct to protect runs headlong into the fact that, or I should say the reality that independence means risk, not just on the road, but everywhere. And we have to adapt to that through the anxiety. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you're lucky, they're going to study groups. I mean, that's a very sweet, wholesome thing to say. We don't know where they are.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and they could be, I don't know what.
And that's it. That's the catastrophizing part that comes out, right? Like, it's pretty easy to go there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even when Casey was just a freshman in high school, towards the end of the year, he had friends that were seniors, and he would say, "Oh, you don't have to come get me. I'll have Ricky drive me home." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Okay, that sounds great. What's this Ricky like? Is Ricky responsible?" Like, it's very nerve-wracking to not know if Ricky is a punk who's going to get in an accident because he's texting and smoking, or if he's a good, responsible guy who's got both hands on the wheel, literally and metaphorically. It's all scary.
Punks are often going to be the most responsible of kids, but yes, I understand what you mean.
The thing that's funny about that, though, is that the kids' side is important too, right? Like one of the things I noticed was that, and still do, is that from about middle school on, I think kids have their own sort of anxiety. It's like a fear of competence, right? This is a new you want me to go use an ATM or talk to a grocery store clerk or like whatever it is, like they're worried about the pressure on to succeed at something that's completely new. And they too are facing that attachment push-pull, right? I need my parents, I reject my parents, just as we need our kids and we have to let them go. That tension is hot.
Yes.
And that's, I was going to pull the lens back a bit to talk about some of the other kind of letting goes, but I just want to focus on what you were saying there, Peaks. I think it's so right. And I think me and my sister experienced a form of this. Again, I don't mean to drag my parents. They were wonderful people in their own ways, but they were going through some hard things, especially when I was a teenager. It was when my mother's drinking was at the worst. My father was kind of, he and I were just not seeing eye to eye on a lot of things. And I basically had free reign as a kid. I didn't have a curfew. I didn't have, people worrying about where I was and stuff like that, which to me was great in a lot of ways. But also, like, I remember when I got in a lot of trouble in some ways and had kind of a pretty rough childhood in a lot of ways. And my sister, years later, when she was going through that, like, asked my dad to give her a curfew. She wanted rules. She wanted structure.
Is she older or younger than you?
She's about 7 years younger.
Okay.
So when she got to be teenage, she started wanting those. No, she wasn't as a 22-year-old asking for that things that I wasn't getting at 15. And yeah, so I think it's really interesting how so much of this is also figuring about like when is the kid ready to let go. And so with that, kind of pulling it back a bit, when we talk about letting go, the car is a great example. Pete, you've mentioned a couple. What are some other examples from all of us about times when you've had to, or that I can imagine having to let go? Because I'll actually say I let Pete start. So what are some other examples?
Well, I here's one that I'm sure is probably, if not already facing Mandy, is having theater kids. Because, and it's the same thing with kind of sports kids, but I think theater kids are an interesting breed because shows are at night. And when you have kids who are in long runs in high school and rehearsals go late, eventually you're not there all the time. And you have to find some way to get in bed and pretend to sleep anxiety free while they're out in the dark. And that was really hard to adjust to, right? That was, cast parties were a nightmare. A nightmare. They're just up the street at, stupid Applebee's, but I was still like, it was horrible. If they're out past 11:30, 12 o'clock, I'm just awake and I'm trying to let go of that anxiety, knowing that they're with good kids, they're with other theater kids, they're fine. But the reality was my heart was racing and I had to figure that out.
I need to recommend the SNL video, The Crucible Cast Party.
Is amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is.
For any theater kid or theater parent or
cast party.
Right?
At the Crucible Cast Party.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
I love it so deeply.
Yeah.
But I think that, that doesn't bother me. Like Casey was a kid who went to preschool, and even before then he went to a daycare. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's hard to let them go out at night. Casey tends to be in touch and smart, and I'm grateful for that. But have I told the story about how my husband sat outside the daycare with the car running in the parking lot and he couldn't leave while Casey was in the daycare at 2 years old? Mm-hmm. And I had a family obligation and I wasn't there. And I said, "Where are you?" He's like, "I'm sitting and watching the window. I'm not leaving this place."
Yeah.
He couldn't let go because Casey was crying when he handed Casey over. And we had done this gradual step up daycare where they say, come and spend the whole morning here with him. Then come and spend an hour and a half with him. Then come and spend a half hour. Today, you're just going to drop him off. And Jer couldn't do it. He sat there for the whole 3.5 hours in his car.
That's amazing.
I said, at least go down the street, get a cup of coffee, read a book, do some, if you don't want to go home. Nope, I'm not leaving here. What if he needs me?
Well, and that's exactly why I kind of thought this was a topic that would appeal to all of us. And because it seems like something we're constantly doing, because in about 3 to 4 months, we'll be taking our kid to daycare for the first time. And we've made the plan that Mary won't be officially starting work back until like the Wednesday of the week that we're dropping him off. Not because we think he won't let us drop him off, but because we think we won't be ready on Monday or Tuesday. We'll need the halftime. And even before that, Mary's parents are fantastic grandparents. They've really had to, they've stepped up and been there for us in a lot of ways. The longest Mary and I have been together away from our kid was about 90 minutes when we handed him over to Grandma and we went out to the grocery store and just did a couple's grocery store trip together, which, does not sound like the most romantic thing in the world, but if you've been living off DoorDash for a while and just kind of spend some time together and laugh about, what you find at the store and buy a weird flavor of potato chips, that's a great date. And it was both pretty nerve-wracking for both of us, and like the minute we got back, Mary just beelined for the baby and was like, "Sorry, Mom," and like took the baby back. And so it was just interesting to me thinking like that all the way up to like they have kids of their own, they get married, like whatever it is. It's really just always this letting go process, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We were talking before we started about one of our colleagues who just yesterday did the drop off of their kid to college, and it just makes me think because I've now done it twice, and the first time was an absolute, it was just an overwhelming, terrifying experience because I did not know how to rationalize my own feelings. I was no longer it wasn't like I was nervous that they weren't going to succeed. There was some of that, like, what have I forgotten to teach them? Do they know how to write a check? But most of it was, why am I feeling this way? I have raised this kid. They're competent. They're fine. Why am I feeling so overwrought with emotions that I can't really put words to? And I spent that, the entire weekend, that first weekend, deep cleaning, steam cleaning the carpet in their bedroom, washing their sheets, flipping their mattress, like cleaning everything, because I couldn't quite figure out how to separate myself from like their stuff. I needed runway for that. And it was really hard. And I think that's what I've heard from a lot of parents. It's like the part that is of letting go that is so hard is not being able to understand why you are feeling grief and loss in such a time of excitement and, hopefully joy that they're transitioning to this new thing. And how do you figure out how to compartmentalize in a healthy way?
A lot of it is simply that you're going to miss them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's take parent-child relationship out of it. When you love someone and they leave you, it's grief. It's sad. You miss them. Yeah. And then you add in all of the complicated dynamics of wanting to protect and teach. And it's just, it's rough stuff. And I can't fathom the transition to college. We're still a couple of years away from that. But one of my best friends is currently at school drop-off, and she's a mess.
Yeah.
She's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
There's just no way to deny it. This person you love and adore, who makes you laugh every day, will not be there. And thank God for technology. I mean, who knows what it'll be, Matthew, when Penn leaves your home.
Uh-huh.
You might have a thought, and he might have a thought, and they might connect, and I don't know. But kids today can text their parents. I stalk Casey when he's at a sleepover or something, and I'll just be like, oh, funny thing. And I love when he responds to a text, and I just feel connected.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think about how, I'm sure this is true for all three of us, and I'm the youngest of the three of us, so we're pretty close in age. We didn't grow up with a lot of that stuff.
Right.
I taught my mother how to use AOL Instant Messenger. AIM, if you can remember that, because I realized that she couldn't put a guilting tone of voice into her texts, and so it was a lot safer for us. But also, just that immediacy of connection and stuff like that, and it is such a part of our world, that I text with my father. That's how I communicate with him a lot, and I'm sure we will.
Mm-hmm. And my kids are FaceTime first people, right? They're video first.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
And so,
okay.
Yeah, and so we're
that.
constantly looking at their faces, no matter where they are. The other thing that I'll say, and this is the controversial thing, but because I think there is a sense that location tracking is invasive. Tracking your kids' phones. What we did, the way we approached that, because we have, we're in the Apple ecosystem, and so once you have a family in the Apple ecosystem, you can track each other, and that's really how we put it to one another. That this is not about an invasion of privacy. This is about knowing where all of us are. That the fact I can see you on a map, you can also see me. You can see where I am anytime. And if you ever need just a dose of comfort or just to know Dad's at home, you can look at that anytime you want. I'm opening myself to that for you. And I found myself when they went to college, I did find myself looking at them on campus. And it gave me just a little sense of peace that they, after a couple of weeks, it became, they are where they need to be.
Right.
And I have a visual representation of that. And that felt good. It didn't feel creepy. And I don't do that anymore at all, unless we're trying to find each other in a location, we'll look, but it's just a sense of peace.
On an unrelated topic, how does one have an affair if you're in the Apple ecosystem and you have these trackers?
Asking
I'm
for a
asking for a
friend.
friend.
Yeah.
But honestly, I didn't know Jer could track me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
I
you
don't
have
care
to
for that.
you have to both know that you can do it and know how to do
he
it.
does it. He does it for Casey. You
Yeah.
know, so he
Yeah.
can say, "Oh, he's whatever." You understand
Yeah.
what tracking is. I don't need to give you an example.
Sure.
But yeah, that's I wasn't aware of that. But Casey has been going to sleepaway camp for many years, and it's a wonderful camp here in California, and they have an amazing app with facial recognition, and they have a full-time photographer going from activity to activity, taking thousands of pictures of all the kids. So throughout the day, you get a little bloop, and I get a picture of Casey in the cafeteria or, you know, waiting to get on a jet ski or whatever he's doing. And it's the most joyful, gratifying proof of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Casey ain't going to write me from camp. He never does. He's not going
Right.
to, you know.
Right.
So, but that's my equivalent at this point is when he's at sleepaway camp, I get to see him every day and just know he's there doing what he's supposed to be doing in a water fight or something. And that
Right.
makes me so happy.
Let me ask you guys this. I admit I have a very different perspective on this right now.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you jumped to the affair. Part of my thought is just like, how do I go to a store that my wife isn't expecting anything from and like buy her a surprise gift, you know?
Well,
But
doesn't that say a lot about our characters?
well,
Yeah.
I'm polyamorous, so the affair part isn't as concerned.
Yeah.
But
True.
I mean, there could be cheating in polyamory, to be clear. But again, trying to fight my emotional reaction, just ask this as a question. Let's say you do see that one night your kid isn't on campus. They're off in what a quick Google search tells you is a pretty rough part of the city. And then the next day, they're back on school. What do you do about that? Do you ask them, where'd you go last night? Did you just try to, start scoping them out to see if they go back again? What would you do with that information that this app gave you?
Well, as you can imagine, because we've been doing it as a family through middle school and high school, we've normalized conversations about that. So it's not a surprise if one of us says, "Hey, I noticed you were out doing, at such and such a place last night. What were you up to? Everything okay?" And those kinds of conversations are totally normal and chill. And so, yes, I absolutely ask. And I think as a result of that, everybody's, we're all pretty open about, what we're up to. Can you still go to places and buy presents that are a surprise? And you don't? Yes, you can. You can absolutely turn it off for a time. Don't worry about it. You can have your affairs. But the we do get all the time, we'll look at it and they're not in the dorm room or something like that. And we just have to say, okay, I've done my best. I've taught them to make decisions. I have to let go of the feelings that I'm having right now, which is the feeling of anxiety. I don't know this location where they are, and then deal with it in a sort of calm, distant way later.
Right. And is there kind of an approach of no judgment of like if they tell you that they did, that they met someone at a bar and went and spent the night with them? I'm not impugning your kids or anything in particular, but like if they give you information that you would not be like, that's a happy, healthy thing for my child to be, that there's sort of a sense of like, well, I'm glad that you told me and that makes it okay?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, we can't, I can't have a relationship with my kids that is, flourishing and thriving as adults, as our roles change, if there's any indication that I'm judging from a distance, right?
Right.
What business is it of mine at this point, what they're doing as young adults, when I've done everything I feel like I could do? And now I just get to lob conversation grenades. That doesn't do anybody any good. So we have to teach with, we have to inquire without judgment. And what they know is that generally we're asking out of a good place, right? Yeah. And I'll be honest, we don't ask very much anymore. It's been a couple of years that they've been kind of, transient in the home, living mostly away, and so we've gotten to that point where it's okay.
Well, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Mine might be a slight topic shift.
Okay,
So,
let me hit one more thing on this then, if
Yeah.
you don't mind. Well, and maybe that's why. Maybe it's because it takes all of the prep. Because when you guys talk about that, what I'm remembering is, being hyper vigilant when I was talking to my parents about what I was or wasn't doing and never opening a door. Never opening a door where they were going to start asking a million questions, and it would be something that I thought would sound worse than it is, and they would start asking me about it and be like, oh, well, is that why you're not getting good grades? Because you're going and doing this thing instead of study, and that's where to me, that's what the surveillance thing seems to lead to immediately. And, but I can hear that that's not necessarily the way in which it's encountered, and that if there really is this kind of trust and no judgment and a sense of like, yeah, we want to know, but we're not about judging or yeah, I'm just so much of me is still on the like, but kids need some privacy. Like you need to have some ability of like, I am getting away with something on dad, and that's fun and that's okay. But I also hear what you're saying, and that we'll check back with me in 15 years. Because right now I'm like, hell no, I would never do that. But I hear you're offering me a vision that's so different from what I would expect. So I'm like, okay, now actually I can see how that would work when you've built that level of trust and support and all that.
I think it's easy, I think, in any of these, and I've had this conversation with others too. It's easy to hear that we track each other and to assume, because this is where our brains go, that what I have is like a Bruce Wayne level of computer monitors and maps that are constantly buzzing with the people in my life. And that's so far from the case, right? Like it takes an act of will to go open the app, to look where they are. And we just don't track each other that way. I mean, I guess you can set up automations and alerts that say if somebody goes into this zip code, make sure to send me a notification. But that's just not how it works, right? It's just the reality is much gentler and much more practical, I think, than anything. It's much more like, hey, I'm coming into the bus station. Can you track me starting about 8:20 so you can pick me up when I get there, right? Those kinds of things. And hey, I see you're passing the store right now. Would you mind picking up milk? Like that's the kind of stuff. And I also think because the kids see me and my wife tracking each other for those kind of practical purposes, it's just normalized, right? It's just we're a family, and this is just another dimension.
Well, this goes exactly to the adjacent topic. Matthew brought up privacy, and you're bringing up how often you check this app or how you utilize it. And I'm seeking advice from both of you here. How do I let go in terms of checking Casey's phone? He got in trouble on his phone a few years ago and was doing things he should not have been doing. And we didn't know because we weren't actively checking his phone. Once I did, we shut it down, new rules about the phone, new parental blocks on the phone. And then I said to him, I'm going to spot check your phone. I'm going to make sure this isn't happening anymore. And he said, I understand. Got it. That was years ago. And I find myself still glancing at the phone under the guise of, I'm just making sure everything's okay. But full disclosure, I've looked at some texts that are not dangerous texts, but I'm like, oh, I wonder what that kid's up to. And it's snooping. It's crossing a line. But now I can't stop because I've set up the fact that we are going to spot check your phone and make sure you're not doing anything you're not supposed to be doing. How do I let go of that? Or do I? I mean, Matthew brought up privacy, which is something I firmly believe in. I would not go scour his room and go into, I've given him journals and said, these are your private journals. I would never open his journal, ever. But why do I feel the phone? I can.
Yeah. This is a sort of, I learned a new word that that's been sort of tossing around, and you're I think as many parents do, you're demonstrating it. The word is arcasia. Have you ever heard the word arcasia?
It sounds like a Lord of the Rings land.
It does, right? It describes the act of having firmly held beliefs in one area, but acting against those beliefs, right? For some reason or another. And in your case, you have firmly held beliefs around privacy, and you are acting in a way that you're describing is against your beliefs. Like it exists in that conflict area. That describes Arcasia. And all I can tell you is what we did, because we had a very similar kind of an experience, right? And I think all kids, when they're learning about technology, particularly around social networks, right? All social networks and the apps that enable them, they will screw up. They have to screw up, or they will not understand what the guardrails are. But at some point, those guardrails, like, they have to be able to self-monitor those guardrails. And we did the same thing. We took them away. We had all the parental controls. I actually created an app download raccoon trap so that they could download whatever apps they want, but they weren't allowed to delete them without parental approval. So they would download stupid stuff that I wouldn't want them to download, and it was like, oh, their little hand was stuck in the cookie jar, right? Because I could see those apps. They couldn't delete them in time. And that
You're a mad genius. I love it.
It didn't last. I had to have a trail of evidence, or else none of it matters.
Right.
So, but it didn't. I found it didn't actually last all that long. And I think it's from a number of factors not related to me really at all, or us as parents, but more that we got very, very lucky with the community of kids that they ended up friends with. And even though they were exploring all kinds of technology, once they hit that sort of 15, 16, we just didn't have anything bubble up to a need for us to get involved, and honestly they stopped questioning our parenting in that area. So we stuck with look, if you're old enough and capable enough and smart enough to drive a car, then we're going to trust that you're old enough and capable enough and smart enough to start weaving your way in and around social media. And both my kids waited a little bit longer to drive. The deadline, I think, or not deadline, what is the age limit to be a kid on the Apple family plan, where you still have parental controls, is like 17, I think. And so we just rode that out. And that was like a birthday present. At 17, you have complete autonomy to download and delete and do whatever you want to do. Create new social media accounts, that's fine. Up until then, we ran into the sort of practical limitations of things like school groups run by faculty members communicated on Instagram. Like, we kind of had to give him Instagram, but that was one of the things that we just sort of said, look, this is going to be a thing we're going to talk about regularly. And we're going to follow each other, and we're going to make sure, like, the deal is you can't create private accounts that we're not shared with. And that's the spot check. We did it. I think we spot checked like twice. And we just, it never came up after that first time. It just never came up. It was like, let me take the win that it was a lesson well learned. And let's see what happens next.
All right. Well, Pete has given some really good advice, I think, from a place of a lot of perspective. No, Pete, this isn't making fun of you. This is making fun of me. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on what you asked, Mandy.
Yeah.
Clearly having no experience whatsoever. Expect having the experience of a teenager who did not often have the best relationship with my parents around this kind of stuff. Particularly because, I always felt in a weird place because I did an incredible amount of dangerously stupid stuff, but didn't actually do it. So I'd hang out with people who were doing really bad illicit drugs, but I wasn't doing them. I was just, but then my parents would be like, so why were you at, this place where everyone knows you go to buy these drugs? Anyway, to me, I think the first thing I would want to think about, and we're all being very careful not to name what our kids do, which I think is for the best, let's not air too much dirty laundry. I'm going to give some fake examples though. I think that the first thing I'm going to figure out is, what's the bad thing that happens if my kid does what I don't want them to do? Because the two examples that occur to me are, if my kid is downloading porn that I don't want them to see. And that's, I have all sorts of feelings about that, but we can all agree that they're developmental age and also levels of violence and all this kind of stuff. And there's that where it's any one individual instance isn't the end of the world. but it's a bad pattern. We want to break it. Maybe they're using our credit card to buy stuff. Like, all that's bad. Versus, are they downloading an app that's allowing them to talk to adults who might want to meet up with them for nefarious purposes? Because to me, and I think this is where I'd go kind of a bit against what you were saying, Pete, about the word you used. To me, it's not a question of, do you not apply your principles in all time? It's, what do you do when two principles come up against each other? Because to me, I think the dueling principles are, do I give my kid privacy and do I keep my kids safe?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the risk assessment comes in, of the, like, if they buy porn one more time than I want them to, okay, we're going to work on that together, but I don't feel a need to be right up in their privacy. If they're using my credit card to ring up huge bills, that's another issue. But certainly if they're, like, faking an adult account and making an account on some website that allows them to meet up for, some kind of adult liaison with an adult when they're not an adult, that to me is much more of a, like, no, we can't, that can't happen once. That's a much more of a danger. And I think then, to me, the next thing is, and again, this is just, I don't have the experience you two have. It's just the experience I have in the training as a counselor and pastor and all that. I think the one thing I don't ever want to do is let my kid feel like I've broken their trust. And so I think I'm really big in the idea of kind of like you and the other person against the problem instead of you against the other person. So, like, let's say it was porn addiction or something like that. What I might say is something like, hey, I know you've been having this problem. Talk to them about, like, do they understand why it's a bad thing that they're doing this? Do they understand why I don't love that they're doing this? And can I get some buy-in from them about, hey, I see you're having trouble with this. I understand your hormones are going utterly nuts right now, and that's hard to deal with. I had struggles with it too. Can we talk about, I'm maybe going to keep an eye on your phone for a little while because I know this is a problem for you, stuff like that. And I probably sound incredibly naive as I say that, because it may well be that they'll just find some other way around it. But I think, to me, that's the one thing I would want to avoid more than anything, is when I'm snooping in a way that they haven't kind of been aware of, and then I get caught. And that's
I
the thing
agree.
I most
That's
want.
100%.
That's one of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
And again, when all this started, it was, oh, forgive me, Sarah Palin, Mama Bear. Like, I was doing it to protect and save my child.
Yeah.
Now that danger has subsided, and I'm still doing it. So, you are absolutely right that I don't want to get caught. I also don't want to get caught in terms of, if something really nefarious were going on, I don't want him to start outmaneuvering me in a chess match and realize, oh, she looks at my phone, so I need to hide this better.
Right.
I want him to think, she doesn't know how to look in all of this stuff. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, so that if something really awful happens, I can catch it.
Right.
Well,
Does that
you
make
should
sense?
check between the mattresses, because Casey probably has a whole array of burner phones.
Yep. That was the first thing I was thinking.
I wish. He's such a good kid, and I'm so grateful he is such a good kid. But he is not telling me everything, and I know that, and it's hard.
Yeah.
But that's his
Yeah.
right. He has
They
the
need-
right to
they
live his
need-
life and have privacy, and I need to let go.
Exactly that. That's I think what it is. Like, it's the, for us, the need to just sort of manage safety. Like, we have to come to terms with, are we managing our expectations of their safety or the reality of their safety? And
Right.
I think, Matthew, your examples are great and extreme, right? Like, I recognize that much of what I'm talking about comes from a place of extraordinary privilege, that we haven't run into that. That's not to say it doesn't exist. That doesn't say that it's not something that probably is happening somewhere in our neighborhood horribly right now. It's just we haven't run into it. And I think for us to manage our anxiety about those things by exerting our authority over them and their own privacy is where that line we have to draw that line. Like, who are we protecting? Are we protecting our feelings or their lived experience?
Right.
And I guess I'm leaning more toward their lived experience. And I say that saying, yeah, we're the ones who we all track each other. Like that's part of our lived experience too, but we don't like it again, it's not sping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. And I think it is interesting also what you said about the kind of the privilege of not having to face some of the challenges. Like it's funny when you guys were talking about cast parties. To me, cast parties is where first experimentation with drugs, first experimentation with sex, like that's. And then you said like the cast parties is at Applebee's, and I was like, oh, we're talking about a very different kind of thing here.
No, yeah,
very different because our like high school cast parties are not the same as they were when I was a kid, right?
Okay,
like when I was in high school. Now they are like they're just really tame, y'all. Like they're really very tame.
They're not
in our experience.
At someone's house in their basement when the parents aren't checking.
We didn't have a single one of those.
Your kids are nerds. That's probably a job of
say that you know
parenting.
of, but
yeah, right. That's like, fair too. And I hope so. Right. I hope that there was more going on, but I do know that there has been. Okay. I'm going to say this out loud. My kids don't listen to this show. Mm-hmm. I do happen to know that my youngest has experimented with substances finally in college. And I only know this because they happen to be talking to their older sibling and spilled the beans because siblings got to talk, apparently. And I was delighted. I'm so glad that they're terrified to tell me of that, but they experimented. They're fine. They now know what it's like, and they've moved on with their lives. Okay, this is what it means to grow up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very Roseanne.
Yeah.
I could quote the episodes of Roseanne.
Oh man!
Well, and I maybe kind of want to go back and watch those episodes because I think that is a big part, I think, of a healthy strategy, and certainly I want it to be mine. But it's like Mary and I were having this discussion of like, how do you on the one hand feel like there's some lessons you don't learn unless you touch the stove, you know?
Yes.
And like
yes.
When I was in college, there were kids who had experimented a bit with alcohol and with substances and gotten through it and were okay. And the kids who were most likely to be blackout drunk were the kids who came from incredibly strict households where they had never touched a beer before. Mm-hmm. And so if you go from absolutely no freedom to the total freedom of college, like you can get into real trouble. But having that ability to slowly, and to touch the stove and to learn that, okay, that I don't like that experience or I do like that experience, whatever it is. I think this is going to be a topic we're going to come back to a bunch. Let me just segue to it's kind of like the last part of it that I think ties this all in is, am I right in saying that a lot of this is about trust? That it's first about like, do I trust grandma? Like, as much as I trust myself. And then it's about like, do I trust my friend? Now it's about, do I trust these strangers who run the daycare, who run the nursing school? Mm-hmm. Now do I trust, my friend's parents when or my kid's friend's parents when he has a sleepover there or something like that? All the way up to, do I trust my kid themselves behind the wheel or off at college, stuff like that? How much do you think is that a part of this? Is learning not only to let go, but also learning, I think it's easy to say to learn to trust, but I think there has to be some discernment of like, hey, maybe that kid who always comes over with my friend who's always drunk, maybe I shouldn't trust them to drive my kid home, How do you both accept that you have to trust others, but also have some discernment about giving yourself enough reason to feel you can trust them, not just on blind faith?
Well, that's about control, right? I can't control what the parents are doing at another house.
Right.
So all I can do, and we've had talks like this. Oh, how was it? Oh, really? That's how they do things at their house? Well, that's different than our house. Let's talk about that. Let's explain why. I'm being completely hypothetical. Why those parents smelled like skunk or, or there are things that we just can't control. Dropping them off at school, you can't control what the teacher does. You can't control at the daycare. You just can't control it. So you have to let go and let God about it. And it sucks, but you have to.
Yeah. Yeah. But I can't help but think, because I think you're exactly right. I think that's a huge part of it. And at some point, you get into a routine of like, I'm gonna watch your phone right now. I'm gonna do spot checks on your phone, because to some extent, whether it's spoken or unspoken, I need to rebuild trust. And then you keep checking, because why? Like, at what point is trust already rebuilt, but you're still doing this because you don't trust the rest of the world, or it's just habit? And I found myself getting into that all the time, right? That we're just doing a thing over and over again. It's servicing no one, but it's because I haven't been able to let go of some fear that is externalized, probably learned when I was a child. And now I am somehow inflicting my parents' lessons on my kids. And being aware of that and figuring out what I've just created out of habit and internalized trauma is something I'm trying to be really aware of constantly. And I think even more now that my kids are grown, like what is my, how do I have conversations with them when I still fear in very much the same way I always did, but now they're adults. Yeah. Now they pay their own insurance in some cases. Like, it's just, at some point I have to figure out how to let go of that stuff, because it's just not serving anybody, and they've learned the lesson, and really so have I, and it's just habit.
I mean, one of the things that I learned that was the most helpful with my anxiety, which I think is like, we all have them, but like when you have clinical issues of it, it makes all these fears the worst, is the process of catastrophizing, like thinking about, okay, what's the worst that can happen? And is that actually that bad? Yeah. And like I talked with a friend who has a similar issues, and they talked about how, it was utterly freaking them out to think about their kid having a car and maybe getting in an accident. And they kind of, use some of these processes. If you catastrophize, you ask what could happen. Obviously, the worst that could happen in a car accident is really, 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 really bad. So he thought, okay, how do I mitigate that? And he went out and he was going to buy a kid a car, and he just did all the research and found the car that's basically a tank and has airbags in every single inch of it. I think it was like a Subaru something, I don't know. But he was like, with this car, I feel like if the worst happens, if my kid does something stupid, if some other driver does something stupid, yes, there might be some damage to the car, but he's going to be okay. This is a car that's really hard to get yourself hurt. Well, I mean, obviously you can get hurt in any car, you know what I mean? But like, and that's another extreme example, but I think that can often be, for me, that was often one of the things that helped, is realizing like, okay, hey, look, at this daycare, because I did so much research on the daycares, really trying to figure out what's the place for these things, and really realizing, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Like, this place is going to call 911 very quickly. This place is going to be very aware of bullying if things come up. Like, if the worst happens, there's still some safety nets in place. There's some other protections in place. And I think that also really helped because I think you're right. I think it's that. And that's not just about work. That's about our relationships with each other. It's about, like you said, like, can I trust the other person? At some level, and this is not making fun of you, Mandy, at all. I think you made a funny point, because it doesn't work. If you think the only reason your partner isn't cheating on you is because you can monitor where they are at every moment, like, you're already sunk. There's no trust in that relationship. And yeah, I think it's this balance of figuring out, what are the things I'm afraid of? Can I mitigate them? And then I have to trust to some extent that, like, it's going to be okay, because I think we're past this now, but we've all seen the damage that it can cause of parents trying to just be hyper vigilant and never let their kid do anything risky at all. And guess what? Life is risky.
Yep. Woo,
That's
this
it.
episode brought
stuff.
to you by Xana.
Right.
Indeed. Any of the last things?
I think it's really exciting, and I think all of these are opportunities to move to sort of our next evolution, right?
Yep.
And I know that just hearing you guys talk about it, I'm realizing still just how much I'm still dealing with these things, right? I'm still dealing with figuring out what to let go of and what to, how to create future relationships with my kids that really thrive. That journey, I don't think, will ever end. But the roles, the transitioning roles, is where I am right now. Letting go of who I needed to be as a parent, and now figuring out who I need to be as, friend/family.
Yeah, this is not one of those topics like when your baby cuts their first tooth. How do you recognize the signs?
Yeah.
That
Right.
you move past in your parenting.
Yep.
The letting go is a lifelong struggle.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And there's so much more like, I'm just going to throw out to you a question that I want our audience to think about, because this will be out before I think we revisit this topic again. But to me, another question is, what do you do when you and your parent you and your co-parent, your partner, don't have the same level of worry, or one of you is finding it easier to let go of the other, and how does that affect the two of you?
Yeah.
Oh man,
because
we need to do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Maybe
Yeah.
with some guest stars.
Yeah, right.
That could happen. That could happen. All right. Well, thank you both so much. Mandy, thank you so much for bringing this topic up to us. This has been a great discussion. Really helpful for me as I start preparing. Like, I'm just at the beginning of this letting go stuff, and so I can be very breezy about telling you how easy it is. But this has been great. And yeah, thank you both. Thank you to our fans. Let us know what you think. All the information is in the show notes. Both Mandy and Pete do a whole bunch of other great podcasts. Please check that out. All that's in the show notes. On behalf of myself, who also does a couple podcasts under the Ethical Panda, on behalf of myself, Mandy, Pete, all the kids we've had, all the kids we might have, all the kids that they might have, all the kids that you might have, and really all the kids, all the parents, all the people, on behalf of every single living thing on this planet or any other planets that have living things. None of my co-hosts are going to cut me off, so I'm going to have to just keep going. We thank you.
I just want to see where it goes.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
We don't